The haunting unraveling of Ingrid and Eric's relationship as the autumn of 1876 deepened and the winter pressed in. This is a time when the landscape outside mirrored the landscape inside. It was vast, cold, unfamiliar, and quietly cracking. They still shared warmth. They still slept beside one another. They still bore the weight of survival together. But something was changing, and it was changing quietly and slowly, like water slipping through the smallest fracture in stone. Eric was a builder and a provider. He was a man who didn't speak much, but he was constant. He believed in building things, in swinging an axe. He believed in results. When a man worked, the land answered. It had always been that way. At least that's what his father had taught him. He loved Ingrid in the only way he knew how, by doing. By laying stones to hold heat, by making her tea from pine needles to ease her swelling, by carving Elise a wooden lamb after her rag doll went missing. But in those long days of building and hauling, he missed the quiet sorrow in Ingrid's eyes. Or maybe he didn't miss it. Maybe he saw it and didn't know what to do with it. And so he worked harder. And as he worked harder, Ingrid grew all the more quieter. Ingrid was slipping away. She still looked at him with softness sometimes, especially when he wasn't watching. But it was a far-away kind of love now, the kind you hold for someone across a great river. Close, but unreachable. She wanted to tell him how she was afraid. She wanted to tell him that the land felt too quiet. She wanted to tell him that some mornings she woke and didn't know where she was for a moment. That the baby inside her made her feel full, but also hollow, like a bell before it struck. But Eric, he was always moving. He was always focused. And when she did speak, softly saying things like, "Do you ever hear voices in the wind?" he would pause, confused, and say, "You mean coyotes?" She would nod, saying nothing more. He would go back to chopping. She was slipping, but he didn't see it. There used to be music between them. Back in Minnesota, Ingrid would hum while she baked, and Eric would tap his fingers on the table. She would rest her head on his shoulder when the children were asleep, whispering memories of Norway, of the cold sea and her sister's long red scarf. He'd stroke her hair and say, "Someday we'll have land that wide." But now, she was too tired to hum, and he was too tired to listen. Their conversations grew shorter and shorter. "Did the stove heat last night?" "Yes." "I'll bring more wood." "Good." She didn't tell him about the dreams, and he didn't tell her how her silence unnerved him. And every night they lay together like strangers who remembered they once loved. There were moments when it almost came to the surface. One evening in October, Ingrid was shelling beans by the fire. She dropped a handful, too hard, too fast, and the sound startled Henrik, and he burst into tears. Eric looked up sharply. "Ingrid," he said, "what's gotten into you?" She froze. Then she stood. She left the beans and walked out into the cold night air barefoot. Eric didn't follow. He didn't even know what to say. He sat staring at the fire, listening to Henrik's hiccuping cries, and felt for the first time that something real was wrong. Not with the farm, not with the baby, but with her. Still, the next day he said nothing, and neither did she. There were two Ingrids now. The one who smiled for the children, who kissed Eric's shoulder, who swept the floor with aching hands and braided Elisa's hair. And the one behind the smile, the one who stared too long at the woods, who thought of walking into them and just not stopping. She began to believe Eric couldn't see that second version of her, or he wouldn't. And maybe, in a way, she didn't want him to, because what would happen if he did? What if he looked into her eyes and saw only shadows? The turning point. One night, just before the snowfall, Ingrid asked quietly, "Do you ever feel like you've made a mistake coming here?" Eric paused, looking up from his whittling. He tilted his head and then said, "Never, not once," and smiled, proud and sure. Ingrid nodded. She turned her face to the fire. Inside, something crumbled, because she had hoped, desperately hoped, that he would say sometimes, "But we'll get through it," or "I feel it too," or even "Tell me what you're feeling, Ingrid," but he didn't, and she couldn't bring herself to try again.